Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa.
They've poured everything into it, all these guys, and just couldn't be more proud of the mindset and how that's trickled throughout the team and really led us to having some really good practices here all the way through the bowl practice here.
Well, Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer, as well as Michigan's Sharon Moore, had their final ReliaQuest Bowl press conference this morning in Tampa. Next stop, finally, tomorrow morning, the game itself at 11 a.m. on ESPN. And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to the latest edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa. Visit Tuscaloosa alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. And Rodney, I guess you can look at it, you know, excited to be playing in a bowl game, but if you're playing at 11 a.m. on New Year's Eve, you're probably, let's just be honest, you're probably not in the game.
Not where you want to be.
You want to be in. But still, Alabama has a lot to play for. Don't think for 1 minute that they don't. The biggest of which is trying to reach 10 wins for a 17th consecutive season. That is a record. The 9-3 Crimson Tide is a 13.5-point favorite against the 7-5 Wolverines. Now, that point spread has a lot to do with the fact that Michigan has had numerous opt-outs for the game. And some news and notes from today. Still nothing official from Jaylen Mbakwe on his future plans, although the feeling around the program is that he will declare for the NFL draft. Most of the draft boards I've seen have him as a first rounder, maybe the third quarterback taken. Coach DeBoer confirmed today that left tackle Kalen Proctor will play in the game. Rodney pointed out last week that there was some poor information put out by some reporters in regards to his status, and Rodney said last week he expected him to play. He will. Also, Coach today discussing the move from Jaylen Mbakwe from quarterback to wide receiver, and said it's gone very well, Rod. More on that in a moment. And let's get to the game itself with the opt-ins versus the opt-outs. You know, we saw Cam Ward of Miami play one half, set a record, and sit out. That's very peculiar to me, and they wound up losing that game. It was a very close game against Iowa State. Now, you got guys like Booker, Milroe, Jahad Campbell, all are probably going to the draft more than likely, but they have opted in as opposed to a number of players from Michigan that are in the draft that have opted out. Now, we know we have the portal guys that are gone, but as far as the players that are eligible for the draft, it looks, again, much like under Nick Saban, that Alabama's had a good buy-in from the guys who wouldn't necessarily have to play in this modern era of football.
Yeah, you know, Gary, you mentioned Kalen Proctor. I think there was a time there that maybe it was kind of iffy, you know, if he would play or not. Obviously, he needs a shoulder surgery. He's going to have that, I think, after the season very promptly. But I think because of kind of the culture here, look, he played the whole season with the shoulder. Why not play one more game? So I think that's really part of it.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer saying today this Alabama football team is here to win and here to compete, and that's good news. All right, Alabama, though, does have a lot of players in the portal, 15 of them, again, that will not be here. But for Michigan, guys that are not in the portal but have opted out include running back Donovan Edwards, running back Khalil Mullins, tight end Colston Loveland, left tackle Miles Hinton, defensive tackle Mason Graham, defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, and quarterback Will Johnson. Rodney, these are good players. I mean, let's just be honest about it. If you're a Michigan fan, this hurts. This impacts their team a lot.
Well, you look at their defense, which has really kind of helped them
it's their identity,
significantly to be 7-5 is what they are. And, you know, when you lose Mason Graham, you lose Grant on the defensive line, you lose Will Johnson, who's a corner. Those guys are all potential first-round draft picks. You look at Colston Loveland, the tight end, you mentioned him. I mean, he's one of the best, maybe the best tight end in the country, certainly one of the. And they're not going to have their left tackle. You know what, Gary? When you look at this running back room that Michigan has, they're losing their top 2 running backs, okay? There's not a running back in that room that's rushed for 50 yards this year.
Wow. So basically a whole new backfield in a big game. So that's where we're at in college football. Listen, that's why we're praising Alabama. If your guys decide to play and the other team's guys decide not to play, that's to your advantage. That's just the reality of it. All right, Rod, let's get to coach talk. Much of the buzz leading up to the ReliaQuest Bowl is whether fans would get to see Jaylen Mbakwe play wide receiver. Well, from the sound of it, not only is he going to be playing some wide receiver, he may be exclusively on offense against Michigan. This morning, Crimson Tide head coach Kalen DeBoer went as far to say that the wide receiver position could be Mbakwe's new primary position and not cornerback. This is something that they had talked about, and it looks like the move to offense could be a permanent one.
he's got the speed. He's had the ball in his hands, all through high school, running the offense there at that level. And then, we've used him, in the punt return game, in the return games. We're just really comfortable with what he can bring to the table. Now it's just learning the position, learning the offense. So I think you'll see us continue to move in this direction with him.
Rodney, let me get you to follow up on this. You see him wearing number 6 because he's moved to offense. Can't wear 9 because Richard Young has that number. This is Kobe Prentice's old number. We watched him in high school at Clay Chalkwell. He did it all. He played quarterback. He played corner. He returned kicks. He played some at wide receiver then in special packages. So, was just a dynamic high school player with 19 touchdowns and 2,536 passing yards, 891 rushing yards, and 19 rushing touchdowns. So it's not a stretch for him to move to wide receiver, not just for this game, but permanently.
No, I think, when you look at him, obviously he's a great athlete. That's first and foremost. He catches the ball extremely well, has, good hands, the speed, all of the tools that it takes to be a really good receiver. Certainly he has those. The one thing is he's probably raw, in terms of route running. Those things will get cleaned up as he gets some more experience. But I think it's a really good move. And, Gary, when you start looking at Alabama's wide receiver core, obviously it's really thin for this game. But you look towards next year, there's not a lot of experience. You have Ryan Williams, obviously, and Jeremy Bernard. But after that, there's not a ton of experience. So he'll have a great opportunity. Of course, you're bringing in Isaiah Horton from Miami. So, again, I think it's a really good move.
Yeah, and you're right. In long-term and short-term, particularly, though, for this game, Alabama is in, they're a little bit like Michigan in some positions at wide receiver. They've been hit hard by the portal. So this is going to be fun to watch. I think he and Ryan Williams out there, they're best friends. We know that. They could kind of be a dynamic duo going forward at wide receiver. All right, Rod, let's get to some recruiting. 2025 is the focus, but Alabama's already started on 2026. Gadsden City standout Zion Gibson, one of the state's top prospects for the 2026 class, committed to the Crimson Tide last week. On Christmas Eve, in fact. He was a Christmas present for Kalen DeBoer. 6'1", 175, chose Alabama over Auburn, Miami, and Tennessee. He took visits to Alabama for games with Georgia as well as last month's Iron Bowl. And he put out a picture on social media when he went to his first Alabama game. He was as a little boy. He's always been an Alabama fan, and that's great. But what's really great about it is that he has a lot of ability.
Yeah, look at him there. He's very explosive. I mean, you see him working both ways. Guy's really talented, great ball skills. You catch the ball well on offense, you're going to have really good ball skills defensively. There you see him here on this return. You can do it all. And again, look, we've talked about this too. Recruiting in-state, there was a lot of big deal made about that this past year. He's an in-state player. He's a top 5 player in the state of Alabama. So in that regard, it's really big.
Yeah, that's 3 commits for 2026, all in-state, right?
Well, they have the 2 for 27.
27, okay,
Correct.
that's what I got myself at, yeah. 2 for 27, that's even a better jump. So, they've talked about building relationships in state. I got ahead of myself. But 2027, already 2 in-state prospects committed as well. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama men's basketball stays hot and shows off its depth in a win over South Dakota State. And the Crimson Tide women's basketball team finished off its best non-conference run in the history of the program. And now they've got high expectations heading into SEC play. We'll have that story. And in just a little bit, we'll be getting to your phone calls and emails. Again, we're coming to you on Monday night this week. We'll be back Tuesday next week. But the phone number is the same, 205-348-WVOA. That's 205-348-9882. Or you can email us at the address on your screen, TITV@WVOA23.com. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And we're back on TITV on a Monday night, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa. Go to visittuscaloosa.com. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama men's and women's basketball teams gearing up for SEC play, and both programs wrapping up highly successful non-conference schedules. The Alabama men rolled on Sunday to a 105-82 win over South Dakota State. Crimson Tide had its most successful outing from behind the arc this season with 19 made three-pointers. That's good news because they have not shot it as well from deep as we expected. Aiden Holloway had a new career high with 8 made threes and 26 points. Alabama had 4 players in double digits. Holloway 26. We had Philon with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Mark Sears had 20. Grant Nelson had 18. Bama at 11 and 2. And that's a strong record with number 13 Oklahoma coming in here Saturday to open SEC play at 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon at Coleman Coliseum. And Rodney, you and I talked about this on my radio show this morning. Oklahoma's first year in the SEC, but it seems like this is, obviously they want to get a little payback for football, but these teams have played a lot in basketball. If you think about it, the Big 12 SEC Challenge, it seemed like it pitted them up. Alabama went to Norman. They came here. So this is a familiar team, even though it's their first year in the SEC, but they're really good. And we know how difficult this league is going to be. I don't want to make too much out of one game, but it's the SEC opener at home. It's one you got to get.
Well, again, we talked about how difficult that this conference is with all the top teams that they have. I mean, it's going to be a real war in the SEC. And when you've got a game like this at home, you need to get it early.
And Alabama's been playing 11 players. On Sunday, they were a little shorthanded with Darion Reed and Houston Millett out, so they played 9, and it was an opportunity for Holloway, who we talked about. But you got to get back to LeBaron Filine. This is a guy that almost didn't, Alabama didn't recruit him till right there at the very end. But he's a guy, he can defend, he can get to the basket, he can shoot the three, he can, get the ball to his teammates. I like this guy not only because he's talented, but even as a freshman, he seems like he's kind of a leader when he's on the court.
No, I mean, he's just the maturity that he has to go with the skills that he has is really, it's beyond his age. I mean, and to think about it, he was originally, committed to Auburn and then to Kansas, right?
That's right.
And then, so,
actually signed with Kansas. Had to get out of the letter of intent to come to Alabama, but I guarantee you Nate Oates is glad that he has got him. That is for sure. All right, one disappointment. No, that's too strong a word. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. I didn't mean to put it that way. Cliff Amore, who was so good last year at Rutgers, and don't get me wrong, he's been doing some things, but I think they want to and feel like they need to get more out of him in conference play. In terms of defensively, we know he's a good rim protector, but offensively, and I'm not expecting him to go out and average 15 a game, but I think he's got more capability on the offensive end than we've seen from him so far.
Well, and I think sometimes, Gary, again, being a new player, being new players, a lot of new players on this team, I think once hopefully he kind of gets into the flow. Maybe it takes him a little longer, but look, I mean, I think he can be everything you said.
Yeah, he's an intimidating physical presence, no doubt about that. All right, now to the women. Number 19, Alabama rolled over Jacksonville on Sunday, 93-46, wrapping up non-conference play with a 13-1 record. That's the best start in program history. And the one game they lost at Cal was a game that they could have won. This is a team that has been doing it on both ends, too. I mean, they've had a lot of these blowout-type wins. Now, listen, some of these teams they played are not on their caliber, but still, they're taking care of business. Aaliyah Nye had a career-high 30 on Sunday, made 8 3-pointers. Alabama will start SEC play. We mentioned the men play on Saturday at home against Oklahoma. The women play Thursday night at home against Florida. And just like with the men, Rodney, the SEC is so tough, and you've got to take care of business on your home floor, and Alabama opens with a home game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's really difficult in this conference. They've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years. I think this team, obviously, 13-1. You mentioned the schedule, but at the same time, they're 13-1 heading into the conference. So that's really good.
Yeah, and now we'll see, again, you get to conference play, just how good this team is. But I got a feeling that they're pretty good. Well, still to come on Tighter Insider Television, see which Bama players made an impact in our weekly edition of Bama in the NFL. That's always a lot of fun. And coming up next, I'm told we have phone lines that are wide open. Probably something to do with the fact that we're on Monday night. Not everybody's aware of that, although I tried to get it out on social media. But at the same time, if you are listening and you want to call in, phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. There's the email address where you can reach us as well. Let's get to some phone calls and get some opinions and some predictions next from our viewers on TITV. Our latest Bama in the NFL segment. Remember, this is always just a sampling. Devontae Smith had himself a day. Jalen Hurts out, so Kenny Pickett throws an early touchdown to Devontae. Then Pickett got hurt, and they went down to Tanner McKee, who had never played in an NFL game, Rodney. He throws a touchdown to Devontae, and he also got tackled at the 1. He had a huge game as the Eagles blew out the Cowboys 41-7. Watch this catch by Amari Cooper. He still got it. Josh Allen throws it up, and Amari goes up and gets it with one hand.
Wow.
Just snatches it. The Bills blew the Jets out 41-14. You've got Mac Jones From Alabama to Brian Thomas Jr. of LSU. I'll tell you what, LSU's like Alabama. They turn out some receivers. Mack is playing well. Hope he gets a look as a starter again in the league. And Josh Jacobs punched in a touchdown for the 7th straight game. That's the longest streak for any Packer since 1960. You know who did it in 1960?
Paul Hornung.
You're right, Paul Hornung. So that's but they fell in a tough one to the Vikings, 27-25. All right, welcome back into TITV. Let's get to the phone lines, and Steve is going to lead us off. Hey, Steve. Good evening.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I enjoy the show.
Thank you.
And my question is, are we looking at signing any more high schoolers at the February signing date, or have we pretty much moved on to the 2026 class?
Yeah, Steve, first of all, I think, the portal, obviously, it's going to the players that play after the 28th still have 5 days after their last game to jump in the portal. So I think there's possibly, I should say, some additions in the portal, 1, 2, how many ever that is. But I think mainly high school recruiting for 2025 class is pretty much wrapped up. It's not saying they won't sign somebody. They certainly could. Ty Haywood is still not signed, 5-star offensive lineman that has been committed to Alabama. He hasn't even decommitted yet, Gary. I think it's Michigan, Texas A&M, Florida State. I don't think he ends up here. But for the most part, yes, I think it's over.
All right, thanks, Steve, for that call from Trustful. Let's get to Jeff over, pardon me, let's get to Jeff over in Homewood. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Gary and Rodney, I hope y'all are doing well. I got a quick question for you. Now that Squirrel White from Tennessee has jumped in the portal, do y'all think there's any chance that he ends up in Tuscaloosa? And y'all have a great new year.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for the call. Yeah, I think, he went to Clay Chalkville. He was teammates with Jaylen Mbakwe. I would think there would be interest on Alabama's side. I know last year in Tuscaloosa he had a great game against Alabama. Yeah. This is a special athlete.
Well, and Gary, the thing I like about Squirrel White, when you watched him this year, he was injured, but he wouldn't come off the field. Made some really tough physical plays for a kid that was injured the way he was. But I really don't know. I think that's a fantastic question, by the way. He does want to get closer to home. Mississippi State's kind of been mentioned a little bit. We'll see. And I do think, though, that if Alabama could find the right kind of slot receiver, one that they really felt could be a strong contributor next year, they'd probably take one.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls. And we're going to get to a timeout. Still to come on Tider Insider Television, a pair of former Alabama football players jump in on the college coaching carousel. New stops for them in the coaching ranks. We'll have more and more phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, there's the phone number, 205-348-9882. Go ahead and give us a call. We'll be right back with more TITV right after this. All right, Alabama football players have gone on to be coaches in a lot of cases, and Sam Shade is leaving Miles, where he did a great job in 3 seasons. Of course, he led Pinson Valley to a state championship. He's now going to Alabama A&M up there in Huntsville. I think that's a great hire for Alabama A&M. And you might remember this guy that we're going to see next. He was a walk-on wide receiver at the University of Alabama and did a terrific job. And you remember Rob Ezel. He did the impression of Nick Saban. Well, he's been moving up in the coaching ranks at South Alabama this past few years with Major Applewhite, and before that with Kane Womack. Now he's headed to Wake Forest to be the new OC. So congratulations to those two guys, and happy for them. All right, welcome back into TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, we serve your family like it's our family. Here it is. Other than Tyler Booker, will the rest of the offensive line return? That's from Matt in Tuscaloosa, and it appears that's going to be the case.
Yeah, right now, you've got Proctor, obviously at left tackle, Booker at left guard, as you said, gone. Brailsford's back, Jaden Roberts back, Wilkin Formby and Elijah Pritchett back on the right side. One of those guys, Pritchett could end up the left tackle, certainly. So, yeah, for the most part, you've got 4 or 5.
Yeah, so that could be a really good offensive line again next year, even without Tyler Booker. All right, let's get to a phone call. Alex is with us from over in Clay County, there in East Alabama. Hey, Alex, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
Hey, got a quick question, man. Is there any chance that Alabama might be in on David Gusta, the defensive lineman out of Washington? And I've heard rumors about Peter Wood transferring.
Yeah.
Can you give me insight on any defensive linemen we might be in on? Thank you.
That's a great question, too, Alex. Alabama, I think, in my opinion, certainly does need defensive linemen. I mean, obviously, they got Kelby Collins from Florida last week or so. But, yeah, the kid you mentioned from Washington State, he's a really good player. I haven't heard what he's going to do, but he is in the portal. Peter Woods, there was a lot of smoke about that. There was never anything that we heard definitively that he was going to go in the portal. As of right now, he hasn't done it. And, you know, Gary, his last game, you know, with the 28th, he's still got, you know, it's really over for him because they've already played their last game. So he is actually, he's not going to be available in the portal.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls. Let's get to one final email before we get to the break. And this is from Lori in Hoover. Will Alabama be preseason top 10 in 2025? Let me think a minute. Yeah, I think Alabama will be. I don't know that they're going to be top 5. In fact, I would probably say that they won't be top 5. But I do still think they'll check in at the top 10. It's way early, Lori, but I'm thinking Alabama's probably going to check in somewhere between 7 and 10 would be my guess. Just off.
Yeah, I mean, certainly could. Here's the thing, too, and you know this, Gary. There's a lot of doubters right now.
There are.
A lot of doubters. This game right here, even though it's against a depleted Michigan team, you lose this game, there's going to be a lot more doubters. But yeah, Alabama does have a good nucleus coming back. You're losing the quarterback. I think that's big. You know, certainly could be, like Gary said, from 7 to 10.
All right. Well, we will see. I'm sure there'll be some preseason bowls out right after this season's over. They have the first one comes out. We'll come back with our game predictions next here on TITV. All right, time for picks, and we got to go pretty quick, Rod.
Well, look, Michigan's depleted.
Yeah.
I was going to pick a really big blowout, but I'm going 31-13.
You know, when I turned my score in, Stu said, your score is very similar to Rodney. As I said, folks, we never talk about these scores. I got it 35-13. I'm right there with you. I think that if Alabama doesn't win this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'm going to be surprised, that's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Tighter Insider TV. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're back on Tuesday next week. Good night, everybody.